Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we dig into the systems that shape our world. Today, we're talking about something you've probably seen a million times, those massive housing blocks that define so many cities. But what if they're not really just buildings at all?
Our guide for this is Miles Glendining's incredible book, Mass Housing. It's a sweeping global history that really connects the dots between modern architecture and, you guessed it, state power.
So, be honest, when you see one of these massive housing projects, what do you think? Is it an architectural eyesore? Maybe a failed social experiment? Well, we're going to try on a totally different lens today. What if we look at it as a powerful, deliberate tool of the state?
Now, just so we're clear, this isn't a book summary, and it's definitely not advice. The best way to think about this as a structural companion. It's a mental model to help you see the hidden logic behind this massive global system. So let's jump in. Okay, first things first. We need to get really precise about what system we're even talking about. What is this thing we call mass housing? The book calls it a state-sponsored delivery machine. And that phrase right there is the whole game. We're not talking about an architectural style, right? We're talking about a process, a machine that takes three key ingredients and uses them to completely rewire how our cities work. And here are the three core parts of that machine. You've got state authority. That's the power, the money, the land. Then you have modern architecture, which gives it the ideology, that grand vision of a clean, rational, standardized future. And finally, industrial construction. That's the method, the know-how to build at a scale and speed that was just unimaginable before. You put those three together, and you have the system. So, if it's a machine, what's its purpose? Why would a state bother building something so enormous and complex in the first place? What's the real incentive here?
Well, the incentives go way beyond just putting roofs over people's heads. States use this machine to stabilize whole populations, to signal to the world that they're modern and powerful, and to manage huge pools of labor. It's an incredible tool for claiming legitimacy, especially after a crisis. And the system itself perfectly rewards what large state bureaucracies are good at: speed, massive scale, and total standardization. This quote from the historian Charles Tilly is absolutely central to the book's argument. Think about it. National emergencies, especially war and the rebuilding that comes after, create the perfect storm for the state to step in a huge way. The same organizational muscles you use to mobilize an army are the ones you use to build housing for millions of people. And this leads to the book's main metaphor. The entire global story of mass housing can be seen as a 100 years war against the enemy of bad housing and slums. It wasn't just one big push. It was a century-long series of strategic campaigns fought with almost military-like planning and execution all over the world. So what happens when this machine gets deployed? What are the predictable outcomes? What does it actually do to a city?
Okay, here it is. This is the single most important metaphor we're going to use today. Try to think of mass housing, not as a new building or even a new neighborhood. Think of it as a brand new operating system being installed directly onto the city. Because it doesn't just add stuff, it fundamentally rewrites the rules of how the city works. It carves out entirely new districts from scratch, imposes a single standardized way of life, and creates these vast new urban realities. You see it everywhere, from the famous social housing of Red Vienna to the monumental projects of New Belgrade in former Yugoslavia. And this brings us right to the heart of the matter. It brings us to the core argument here, which is the common and I think deeply flawed way we tend to look at all of this.
The crisis in perception is this. We treat mass housing as if it's all one thing. We see the concrete towers, the repetitive designs, and we think, I know what that is. We mistake it for a single architectural monoculture.
But that's just looking at the surface. The common misperception is that this was all just one big, failed architectural style. The structural analysis, though, shows us something way more interesting. It's a state-designed system that, get this, produced wildly different outcomes depending on the local politics, the economy, and the culture it was dropped into.
Glendinning nails it with this phrase. He says the whole system is a paradox. On the one hand, you have this massive, top-down institutional force pushing for everything to be the same. But on the other hand, you get this kaleidoscopic diversity of what it actually looks and feels like on the ground. The machine might be global, but its results are always local.
So finally, if the system gets so much criticism, why does it stick around? Why do we keep seeing new versions of it pop up again and again?
Well, it's because the triggers that turn the machine on just keep happening. The crisis after World War I, the Great Depression,
the unbelievable reconstruction needed after World War II, and, yeah, even today's insane housing affordability gaps. Crisis creates pressure. And when governments are under pressure, they reach for the big, powerful tools they know how to use at scale.
Because, in the end, mass housing was never just about housing. It's woven into the very fabric of how the modern state works. It's a huge part of welfare governance, it drives construction finance, it's a primary tool of urban planning, and it's even used to help build a national identity.
And that kind of leaves us with one last big question to chew on. If this system, this huge delivery machine, is the state's go-to answer for crisis time and time again, what does that tell us about the fundamental nature of the state itself?
Crisis and perception is all about examining how systems shape what we believe, and how having better tools can help us all see things a little more clearly.
This project is and always will be free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research that go into it, you can become a supporter on Patreon.
For a much longer, audio-based analysis of this topic, check out the deep dive. The link is in the description. And if you enjoy this kind of systems-level thinking, please do like, subscribe, and drop a comment with books or topics you'd like to see us tackle next. Thanks for watching.